Sorry, Troy. All right, I want you to think about something, but I do not want you to yell it out, okay? Junior high especially. Just keep it to yourself. Just think about it. It's a little bit abstract, so you have to use your mind. Again, junior high, try really hard. I think you can do it. Do you ever, or have you ever, hold on to promises that were actually never given? Okay, I'm just going to repeat it. Have you ever held on to a promise or promises that were never given? You just thought that they were given. Just to maybe say it differently, did you ever believe something that was never promised? Just think about it, okay? I'm going to guide you a little bit here. Maybe it's an expectation that you had, but it never materialized because it never had a chance to be materialized. So again, it's abstract, I know. Maybe it's something you thought your parents said or your friends said, and you held on to that, only to find out later on that they didn't keep their word, but they never gave you that word because you only thought they said what you thought they said. Okay? Or maybe it's about your faith. Maybe it's a prayer or something you thought the Bible said. Like whatever. Have you ever held on to a promise that was never given? I think we all do, in many ways. Even if we don't think about it, there are many times that we do. So I just got distracted a bit because I see Cameron and Cameron just chatting with Skylar. Oh, snap. Here's the thing. Even though we might have misplaced an expectation or had a promise that we're holding on to that was never really given, the feelings, that was me, the feelings of disappointment that follow it are real, aren't they? Like even if the promise wasn't there, but then this doesn't happen, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm totally feel let down. I give you, it is a real story. I had a dream. There was a promise made in my dream. A few weeks ago, Christy and I were chatting and planning a trip to East Coast. I love East Coast. I love the coastline. I love the ocean. I love the seafood. I love to drive down. It's just amazing. Like if I live by St. John's or somewhere over there, I don't even know what the province is called, but I just want to live there. It's amazing. So we had this planning of the trip, and I was getting all excited about it, and then I woke up. What a letdown. What a letdown. And the funny thing is, I was frustrated with Christy that now she was like, well, we're not going on a trip. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I was so emotionally invested in it already. I think it happens more often to us than we think. Maybe it's not a dream, but actually it's a real thing when you go through life and there are situations where you hoped and it never happened. Sponsor, I need you guys to stand up, all the sponsors. All the sponsors. All the sponsors. All right. I'm going to count you off, okay? Remember your number. It's important. Melody, stand up too. Jonathan, stand up, please. Let me say please. Ben, could you stand up, please? Yeah, okay. I'm going to count you off. Remember your number, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 1 and 2. 21, 22. Stay standing. Stay standing, okay? Stay standing. By the time college or university will arrive, according to Life Research from 2014, 70% of people who attended youth groups will drop out of church. 70%. So all the sponsors whose number is not 1, 2, 3, and 11, 12, 13, and 21, 22, you guys sit down. 70%. If your number is not 1, 2, or 3, or 11, 12, 13, sit down. And 21, 22, just standing. Sit down. Skylar, you're standing. You remain in faith. Do you just see that? 70% of people who went to youth groups, who participate in stuff, who were part, were involved, they just drop out. Now, majority of them, according to the same research, return later on, but this initial exodus is huge. Okay, guys, thanks. You can grab a seat. You guys are safe, those of you. There are reasons. There are many reasons why that happens. In fact, there are 5 major reasons. But number one reason why people leave is because in their thoughts, God has failed their expectations. He never delivered. And so they became disillusioned with their faith. And they left. He didn't stop the evil that he could have stopped. He didn't make things better. He did not transform me faster. He didn't solve my problems. He didn't take my pain away. He did not show up when I needed him. Number one reason why people leave, God failed my expectations. Now listen, we all live in the aftermath of failed expectations and broken promises. But I need you to consider something. Not because this is a good thought, not because this is just something I come up with, but because that's the reality. And when we just grasp that reality, it will not only be our safeguard, but it will actually lead us to life. Here's the thing. All too often, when it comes to our relationship with God, we believe in the promises that he has never made. All too often, we cling on to things that we think God said, but he never did. And then when those things that we're holding on so dearly fail, we look at God and say, why? Where have you been? And all this kind of stuff. Frustrations, emotions, disappointment set in and cloud our vision of what is real and true. Now here's the thing. My hope for Met Youth, for you all, me being part of it, is that we're more than the statistic. That we don't have to bow down to the trends and indicators that so easily overtake pretty much the entire Christian population. In fact, my prayer is that we would swim against the current. Because in drifting, when you find yourself in drifting, that's when you kind of drop out of the picture. But when you fight against the current, when you swim upstream, when you hold on to the real promises, you actually find yourself thriving. You don't just survive as a Christian, you actually thrive. So my prayer, my hope is that that's not going to be our statistic. But since I'm a big in statistics mind, so I looked up one more thing. 70% leave the church, same sample group, 68% of the same sample group could not verbalize the basic teachings of Christianity, like what is the gospel, why Jesus died for them, rose from the dead, and why they needed him in the first place. Is it any wonder that people leave? No wonder the trends are the way they are, but the truth, thinking through, grasping the truth, allowing it to speak to my life, to my mind, sustain us. Listen, there is, and that's what we're going to be talking about, there is a patient confidence that happens in the life of those who put their hope in Christ, in joys and in sorrows alike. Those things do not derail them as faith clings on to what is true about God. Faith works in creating a confident, patient trust in God in every any circumstance. Let me read to you James 5. We're going to read the whole thing. I will actually be finished in about 15 minutes, so it's not going to be very long. But I'm going to read you the text and then I'll bring out 2 points. Chapter 5, verse 1. Come now, you rich, weep and howl for the miseries that are coming upon you. Your riches have rotted and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver have corroded, and their corrosion will be evidence against you, and will eat your flesh like fire. You have laid up treasure in the last days. Behold, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, are crying out against you, and the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. You have lived on the earth, in luxury and in self-indulgence. You have fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered the righteous person. He does not resist you. Be patient, therefore, brothers and sisters, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruits of the earth, being patient about it until it receives the early and the late rains. You also be patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. Do not grumble against one another, brothers, so that you may not be judged. Behold, the judge is standing at the door. As an example of suffering and patience, brothers, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. Behold, we consider those blessed who remain steadfast. You have heard of the steadfastness of Job, and you have seen the purpose of the Lord, how the Lord is compassionate and merciful. But above all, my brothers and sisters, do not swear either by heaven or by earth or by any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no be no, so that you may not fall under condemnation. Let me just explain something about this text, because it's a very interesting text. At the very beginning, he's like, oh, come now, you rich. And he's really denouncing them, right? But the truth is that the rich people he's denouncing, they have never read the letter. They actually were never going to read the letter. James is writing to people who are under persecution, who are under oppression. It's the people, if you remember, who left Jerusalem. They're struggling to find jobs, and when they find jobs, they are being exploited. Like, people are not paying their wages. They're making them work very hard, and then they just demean them and cast them out to the fringes of society. And so that's the people that James is saying, come now, you rich, but they'll never read it. He's writing this denunciation as an encouragement for those who are suffering, trying to remind them that God is not indifferent to their suffering. In fact, that's the very first point that comes out of this text. Come on. God is not indifferent to the sinfulness of men. You look at those first verses, 1 through 5, or is it through 6? Through 6. And it tells you one thing: God sees it all. He knows they're not paying them. He knows they're struggling to survive, and they're being pushed down by those elites of their day. He knows everything that's going on in their lives, and he's not indifferent. He's not indifferent. He sees and he remembers. But here's the thing. I want you guys to remember that, because you will go through life and you will find yourself disappointed in so many ways, but God has never promised. He never promised to the people James is writing to. He never promised to James himself. He never promised to any one of us a worry-free life. There is no promise of worry, trouble, difficulty-free life. In fact, when you come to trust Jesus, something else is in store. If you want to follow me, you got to deny yourself and pick up your cross. If they persecuted me, and they will persecute you. Anyone who wants to live a godly life will suffer persecution. Through many trials and tribulations, we must enter the eternal life. Which is kind of logical, because you live here as aliens and strangers. Like, you are people who have trusted in Jesus, and this world is not pro-Jesus. You have trusted in God. This world is godless. And so any form of light, any form of godliness will be ridiculed, will be pushed aside, will be explained away. That's what you sign up for when you follow Jesus. God does not promise an easy life. I'm not sure if you noticed, 6 times. 6 times James says, be patient or steadfast, or persevere, NIV. 6 times. It's a short text. Be patient. Be patient. Be patient. God sees. God knows. God's coming back. Be patient. There's a time coming. Be patient. It's not here yet. Be patient. Because ridicule, sickness, abuse, violation, broken hope, adversity is coming. Not maybe coming. It is coming. So be patient. I am at work. My ends will come true. You can trust me. Anybody ever went on a road trip? Like, that's a dumb question, right? Like, if you came to the Met and you live in Greeley, hey, let's go on a road trip. We're going to the Met. I love going on road trips with my boys. It's fun. Last year, was it, Troy, where are you? Was it 2 years ago we went to Washington? I can't remember either, but it was awesome. We went to Washington. In fact, we're in the middle of planning another Washington trip, which is going to be cool. All the museums, not all, but many of them are free. It's just a fun time. My friends work at the Canadian Embassy there, so we have a nice place from which we just take off and visit DC. It's amazing, but what drives me nuts is what's so often happen on a road trip. There's this question that comes and just wears you down, especially as you drive. You know, the adults don't ask it. The adults kind of keep quiet, but the kids oh my gosh. And at first you don't mind it. At first you kind of entertain it, but then it just begins to eat you away. What's the question? Right? Like seriously, you just asked 4 trees ago, right? Like, no, we're not, right? The car is moving. Right? Like the landscape is changing. We are not there yet. Yeah, I know. It's like, well, when we're going to get there? It's like, I don't know, only God knows, right? Like, really, God knows when we're going to get, and if we're going to get there. Yeah, Google knows, but Google has ETA. So my middle son is like, what's ETA? I'm like, oh my gosh. It's the estimated time of arrival. Why is it estimated? Because only God knows right, when we're going to get there. Oh, it's just so fresh, kind of funny. But here's the thing. I think they know we're not there yet. You know what I mean? Like, I think they know that. But they want to be there. They want the journey to end. They want to arrive at the destination. They want to finally see what they're supposed to see and experience what they're supposed to experience. And I have to tell you, there are days when I wake up in the morning and I look up to heaven and I ask, are we there yet? Because life is tough. And I know we're not there yet, but the promise is that there is a day set when it's there. And it's now. But the promise is not right now. The promise is in God's timing. Are we there yet? So that's the first point. God is not indifferent to the sinfulness of man. He sees it. He sees it, and you can trust in his justice. You can trust in his day. And he reminds, like when James goes through it, he reminds like at least 4 things, that life is short. Like we all understand that. But it's not just short here. At the same time, life is eternal. And all this is just a prelude to something greater. And God gives us time to make sure that we are in the right standing with him. This is, as 2 Peter says, the time to come to him because he doesn't want anyone to perish. Life is short, but it's eternal at the same time. And then the second thing he's pointing at is that people are broken. People are broken. You're broken. People around you are broken. The moral compass is way off. Relationships are a mess. The value system is all out of whack. The sense of what makes people significant is broken. This is a corrupted world we live in, and there is no promise of any change until we come to the day that God has set when he will restore everything to where it's supposed to be. But until there, are we there yet? Until there, we hope and we look, and we can't look up to God and blame him for that because he said what he's going to do. And as he invites us to go through difficulties, he says he's give us strength for that. Life is short, but it's eternal. People are broken. And the third thing is that everyone is accountable. Everyone is accountable to God. There's not one person who will not have to stand before God. You will have to stand before God. The people who come against you will have to stand before God. And God is a righteous judge. And that's the fourth thing. There's a day set when all brokenness will be undone and sinfulness confronted with finality. So we can talk about people out there, but I want us to just for a second, maybe like 20 seconds, talk about us. Listen, life is short, but it's eternal. You are broken, and you know it. Whatever the fourth thing was. Everyone's accountable to God. And there's a day coming. That's why you have today. To turn to him and live. To turn to him and rejoice in forgiveness. God never promised to bring about fields of cotton candy and dancing unicorns, but he promised us himself as we go through this messed up life. That's your promise. That's my promise. So I want to give you 2 implications here. I'm going to move on to the second point. The first one is leave it to God's justice. Leave it to God's justice. When people come against you, when you find yourself under, ridicule or persecution or whatever else, leave it to God's justice. He knows how to deal with that. But the second implication just falls right on the heel of that. Love them. Love them. It would be a horrible thing for anyone to wish hell on anybody else. Your role as a person who came to trust Jesus is to point to him and say, there is forgiveness, there is restoration, come with me. Whatever they have done to you. I mean, Jesus for a reason told us to give the other cheek, right? He told us to go the second mile. He told us to pray for those who persecute you for a reason, because he doesn't want anyone to go under his condemnation. Leave it to God's justice and love them. And love them. Because they need life just as you do. Because when you were an enemy, God died for you. Because when you were alienated from him, he came for you. And now he's sending you to bring others to him. So that's the first truth to hold on to. God is not indifferent. There is a time coming. He's not indifferent, but there's something that we can live with right now. And the second point is very simple. He can be trusted. He can be trusted. I mean, his reasoning in verses 7 and 12 is so cool, because he goes into two people groups. He speaks about the prophets and Job. So prophets, let's just think about the prophets for a moment. You guys know Isaiah? Who doesn't know who Isaiah is? Not our Isaiah. Isaiah from the Bible. Sweet. Ezekiel. Anybody? Ezekiel? Who's Ezekiel? Nice. Malachi. All right. Just making sure you guys are awake, you know? So, okay, I just get three prophets which are a perfect sample of them all. Ezekiel, God calls him to go to people and tell them all about him and bring them back to himself. And he goes, and you read the book of Ezekiel, he is continually ridiculed, he is continually cast aside from whatever social circles. He is generally considered strange, to put it mild, all his life. In fact, nobody cared for him until a couple centuries after he died. They just didn't care about him. And then Isaiah, who's so large, right? I mean, it's a huge book, and it talks so much about Christ. Isaiah goes to his people, they beat him, they stone him, and they cut him in half. Yay! Sign me up, right? That's Isaiah. And then Jeremiah, who's called the weeping prophet, I love him to death. He's amazing. He ministers for 40 years, longest prophet ministering, 40 years. He sees two people turn to God. 40 years. Two people turn to God. And on numerous occasions, he finds himself in prison, in starvation, confinement, in violent disfavor with people. And in the end, so ironic, he's like, God's going to restore us, he's going to restore us. The people kidnap him from his land. They take him to Egypt and leave him there to die. And James says, look at the prophets. Like, look for what? Like, what the heck am I supposed to learn from that? You learn that God's in control. You learn that he called them. You learn that he sent them. And you learn that he allowed them to be mistreated. He allowed them. In fact, as he speaks to Jeremiah, he says, nobody will listen to you. Now go. That's the commissioning. Hey, who's going to go for me, speak for me? By the way, nobody will listen to you. Now go and do what I ask you to do. And Jeremiah goes. Why? Why does he go? Why? Because life is short. And people are broken. And everyone is accountable to God. And there's a day set when all brokenness will be undone. So they ran for the kingdom of God in hope that God would do something with their lives to bring others to himself. And look at this right here. You guys are the fruit of their life. You are the fruit of the people who died without seeing any kind of fruit, but they knew that God can be trusted and he'll bring about something good through all the crap, if I can say that. How can I say? I always said that. Through all the crap that he led them through. He led them through it, and here we are today. Now, I'm not saying that from your life, but maybe Maybe. But I'm not saying that, oh my gosh, in 100 years when you're long dead, there'll be so many people who will come to know Christ. It would do you no favor to say that. But what I'm saying is that you can trust God with your life, where he puts you, how he leads you, what circumstances he brings in your life, because he's got the whole picture in mind, and you are the part that works. And he leads you in ways that will bring glory to him, joy to you, and life to others. And then it's Job. You guys know Job, right? God allowed Satan. He allowed Satan to afflict him in incomprehensible ways. And the book is long and captivating, and in the end, Job gets to ask God a question. He asks him, why? And all God says back to him simply is, I am. That's what he says, I am. I mean, it's longer than that, right? I'm the creator, I'm the sustainer, I run this world, I made it, I planned it, I'm leading it, I'm writing the history. And while you and I can go, is that the answer? I am? Job rejoices in it, and he takes it, and he lives, and he trusts. That's all he gets. I mean, it's crazy. He's like, why is this happening to me? And God says, I am. And Job is like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I should have seen that, right? Exodus talks about it. Like, I should have known that. And he rests. And he rests. Why? Because he knows what it means. Because he knows who God is. And he's able to trust that in his perfection and glory, he knows exactly what he's doing, even though Job has no clue. And he rests because he knows God. Listen, again, where is this point? Whatever, skip this. Faith works in creating confident, patient trust in every, no, there's a point missing, okay? I'll read it to you. There's a confident patience that happens in life of those who inform their lives with the truth about who God is. The truth about who God is calms the storms of our lives. Are we there yet? No. But God can be trusted in times of adversity. One more statistic. Sponsors, can you stand up for again? Maybe some of you get to live now. Just one more statistic. This is fantastic. I love. This is the best statistic that there can be. Okay? 100%. 100% of those who considered God worthy of trust were able to stand firm through joys and sorrows alike and found themselves near God. That's Hebrews 11. 100% of those, just keep standing, who found God trustworthy, they not only lived, but they thrived in God's presence. That's what I'm hoping for all of us. Thanks, guys and ladies. Thanks, guys. This is the statistic. I'm praying for you. Are you guys clapping for that? Yeah, they lived. All right, I'm done. Let me pray. There's something that I think is lost on you here. And you got caught up with a mob mentality, okay? But hopefully the small groups can figure it out. Let me pray. Father, I just want to pray that for all of us, we would live as people who are kingdom-driven. That our hopes, our passions, spending of our life will be all directed towards making much of you in us and through us. I pray, Lord, that as difficulties come, as adversity arises, we would actually look to you. We would ask ourselves how we can make much of you in those times, rather than just to look for the relief out of those circumstances. Please use the difficulties you allow to take root in us, to bring glory to you and life to us and life to others. Lead us in this, I pray, and I also ask for those of us who maybe have not put our hope in you, that they would find you trustworthy, that they would look back at history, they would look back at your word, they would look back at their own lives and find you not only mighty to save, but mighty to give life as we desire it. Thank you so much for your care and loving kindness, and I pray that we'll run for you always. I pray in Christ's name. Amen.